Hi there and welcome to Project Hospital. Now, it's about time I got back into the hospital game, so I'm starting over with a brand new series. My last series, I tested out if I could design a realistic hospital, which I think I did achieve in many ways, but in other ways, I was really fighting with some of the game mechanics on that one. So, this time around, I'm easing off on some of my design rules because I want my hospital to be profitable. With the addition of the Hospital Services DLC, this is actually a really great time to start a brand new series to incorporate some of that new stuff. I've also finally downloaded Doctor Mode, so I'll be delving into that through this series too. Anyway, if you're watching this off the back of my last series, you'll notice there will be some key differences. Making a profit now takes priority over any realness, so even though it pains me to do so, some design preferences will be taking a back seat to what is profitable. So like, I'll be placing decorative objects in every room to give that nice environment perk, even when it's wildly inappropriate to do so in real life, like in the radiology rooms and stuff. Whatever generates happy staff and more cash, that's what I'm going for. Efficiency at all costs. Anyway, that's the basic idea for this series, so I guess we'd best just get into it. Okay, so here we are with the big empty field again. I've gone for the big size again because I don't know how big this hospital's going to need to be for when I get all the departments up and running, so I always tend to go for the big field just to give myself that room. Now, first things first, I want to move these trees out of the way. I'm not going to delete them because I may use them later on and I don't want to have to pay for them again, so we move these over to this corner here because that's where I'm not going to be building yet. Now, I do have some kind of an idea how I want to lay out this hospital. I want there to be this big central corridor because in my last build I forgot to do anything like that and everybody just kept going through the emergency department no matter where they were going in the hospital, and it got very messy in there. So this time I'm going to have a central corridor and I'm going to have each of the departments coming off it like as a wing, and they're all going to be quite uniform I think in how they're set out so that it gets less confused in that way. So this bit here is going to be the central corridor, and this is coming straight off where the ambulances are going to drop off patients. Now, normally what I would do on a more realistic build would be that would go straight into the trauma unit as part of emergency care. Now, I don't really care about that this time because it doesn't really matter that much. It's not going to take them very long to get patients up into the emergency care from here. So this bit now is just going to be a big massive corridor where ambulances, people, staff, everyone's just going to come through the same doors. I don't really care. It won't make any difference to profitability, and it just makes everything a little bit more efficient for me. This bit here is what will become the emergency room, so the daily patients that come through. I've worked out a rough idea of how big this needs to be. From a previous playthrough, I know that the optimum number of emergency room doctors you need is about 8 by the time you get up to all the patients that are coming through when you're working through some of the objectives for the insurance companies, that's it. That's actually something worth noting. Now, the insurance companies will give you these objectives, and you can earn cash or rewards such as getting more patients through the doors if you complete those objectives. So something that I will be doing very early game is trying to work through all those objectives as quickly as possible to get the most benefit out of those rewards. Now, I think I'm going to do a quick jump cut when I edit this section of footage so that you don't have to sit here and watch me build walls for half an hour. And there we have it, everything now set up so we can open this clinic. That's basically everything you need to get your emergency room up and running. I've got the reception desk, the waiting room, the cleaning closet, and I've got one doctor's office for now. There's enough room here to have 4 running at some point, but I think for the first day we're just going to have 1. It does pain me a little bit that this is on bare floorboards, so basically we haven't decorated any of the floors yet, and that's really grating. But I'm here to save money wherever possible for the first couple of days. And since bare floorboards aren't going to affect the patient's or the staff's opinion of the place, then why should I worry? Now, first thing I need to do before we open this place is obviously hire some staff. Now, I know we're on a budget, but I do have a specific way in which I like to hire staff, and that is by making my own staff. it costs $10,000 to make your own staff. But I think the perks you get for that is worth it. You get to select what their weaknesses are, you get to select what their perks are, and it means that you can tailor staff in a way that works for the long term of the game rather than the short term. So yes, I am spending a lot of money up front, but I think it works out at better value the later the game stage. So I don't really care about the name of the staff or the gender or how they look. All I'm interested in is picking their perks. And the first one I definitely want to pick is this one right up front, which is chemistry. That means that they will clean more efficiently. The next perk I need to pick for the janitor, well, I have to be realistic because this is a janitor. They're not that important to the hospital. They're not saving lives. They're basically cleaning up the blood and the muck that gets on the floor. So things like fast learner, that isn't going to make any difference to the janitor. What I'm going to choose for them is to be fast. Because I know the janitors, they move about the hospital all the time. They kind of jump from one place to the next, and it doesn't always have a logical order. So the quicker they move between those odd places that they decide they're going to clean next, the better. Now, when it comes to selecting the negative perks, we have to select one weakness. These are typically things that cause the worker to act slower, or they take longer to do something, or they put extra strain on other workers in the hospital. So you might get someone with dirty feet, and that's going to cause a problem for your janitors. Or like the new parents, that means that they're going to come to the hospital half drained already because they've been at home tired out from the kids. So I know this is going to sound mean, but I tend to put the janitors on the slow learner perk because they don't have a lot to learn anyways, so it makes no difference to their job. They're just cleaning floors. And it gives me kind of a free pass on the weakness. So, what are you going to do? So next up is our nurse. Well, I say nurse, it's the receptionist. I find it interesting that for the triage in this game, you don't have a separate room with a dedicated nurse in there. It's basically you rock up to reception and you tell the receptionist what's wrong with you and they triage you straight from the reception. A bit odd, but hey ho. Now, perks for nurses, there's a few more options here that include stuff that is interacting with the patients. So you get things like patient care, or you can have a mean staff attribute for one of the negative perks. Now, what I want to go for the perks for the receptionist is I want them to be at the desk for as long as possible, and I need to be mindful of how much they're costing me in this early game. So for the first receptionist, I think, with this game, we're going to take the loyalty perk because that means whenever they level up, they will take 20% less pay and do the same job. So that's going to save me a lot of money later game when the nurse is leveling up, but they're taking 20% less pay than the rest of the staff. And yes, I am starting to feel like a little bit of a crappy boss. Anyway, moving on, next perk I want to take for them is the Spartan. And that's because their needs will reduce much slower than if they don't have it, which means they will be at the desk for much longer in the morning, which is when you get the most influx of patients in. So hopefully that means that they will process those patients for a lot longer than if we don't have that perk. Now, the negative trait for the receptionist, this is where I tend to play the system a little bit, because if I've given them the Spartan perk, that means they're not taking too many breaks and they're not visiting the washroom that often. So if you give them this germaphobe trait down here, you're really not taking much out of their day, or you're not giving them too bad a negative trait because they hardly use the washroom anyway, and that's the only time they wash their hands. Obviously for staff like the doctors or the technicians that are doing exams, they wash their hands a lot more during the day, so giving them the germaphobe trait isn't as great because they're going to be washing their hands all the blooming time. But it's perfectly fine for our receptionist here. Okay, right, and that leaves us with just the doctor to do. Now, for doctors, particularly when we're just starting up a new department, there's going to have to be a head doctor for every department. And if you give the head doctor the good boss perk, they boost all your other staff in that department's perks. So what I tend to do is give the very first doctor I put in, they are going to have the good boss perk, always. The second perk for doctors that are in the surgery rooms, now, because they're the first port of call into the hospital, I try and give them one of the diagnosis perks. These are useful because it either means you're boosting your staff's diagnosis rate, because every time they make a successful diagnosis, they are boosting their general diagnosis rate by 20%, which I quite like. So yep, I'm going to go with practical diagnosis and good boss. And that brings us to picking out their negative trait. So, like the nurse, you get a few more options with what negative traits your doctor's going to have than you would get with someone like the janitor. Where this is concerned, there's only a few negative traits that I definitely don't want. One of those is probably going to be germaphobe because, as I said before, the doctors, especially those in the diagnosis room, they're going to be doing a lot of tests, and that means they're going to be washing their hands a lot more than anybody else in the hospital. So if you give them the germaphobe perk, they'll be just washing their hands all the time and not really doing much else. So I'm going to try and pick this strategically again. If I go for this perk, which is the fast metabolism, that means that they're going to need to eat sooner, but because most of the patients coming into emergency care come through in the morning, they should be clear by lunchtime, and that should give them a good window of opportunity to eat. So I'm going to take a risk with the hunger one. And that denotes that the clinic is now officially open and we can contact our first insurance company. So what are our options? Early game, we don't really have that much choice. We've got cheapo care, which is 80%, and right down at the bottom we have Oopsie Corp. And that's because we've created our own doctors, so we've unlocked Oopsie Corp already because we've got our own doctors, so I think that means we can use that one. And obviously we want to have cheapo care and the uninsured as soon as that becomes available, so that we've got all three operational at once. I think one of our main priorities to keep profitable will be to try and open up some more of these more profitable insurance companies as soon as possible. Now, I was going to start this game with just one doctor, but looking at our finances there, we've still got 29,000 quid. And with that, we could probably set up another doctor's office and get in another doctor, which is going to help with the amount of patients that are going to come through on the first day. So let me set that up, and to do that I'm just going to copy and paste the first doctor's office we've made, which will fit quite snugly into this corner here. There we go. Perfect. And of course with that we need to order ourselves another bespoke doctor. So a second doctor, he won't need to have the good boss perk because he ain't gonna be the head boss. So we can pick straight for him the 2 diagnoses ones, which is giving him massive booster diagnosis skill. Now his negative trait, I'm stuck debating whether I want it to be something like hard worker, but I think that's going to be pretty mean on him and he's not going to be very happy doing his job. Or I could go for something like dirty feet, where it's just going to be a pain in the arse for our janitor and they're going to have to do a more stringent job. But if you remember rightly, we did pick a very good janitor, and the janitor seems to be that they're going to be really fast doing their job, so it might be okay. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to leave this episode here. We've got everything in place we need to open the clinic. Join me next time when we let the first patients through the door, and we'll see how quickly that profit tanks into the negative numbers. Rest assured, I am certain we'll be making heaps of cash in no time. So, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd have built differently to this, or there's anything that you want me to explore in the series in a different way. That's it from me today. Bye for now.